Hello everyone and welcome to video number 9 of our web developing tutorials. In this video we're going to cover divs and spans, and we're going to wrap up our HTML and CSS introductory. In the next video we'll be jumping straight into PHP and learning a little bit about an actual programming language that we can use to generate dynamic content on our web pages. Let's look at what we've got so far, which is not a pretty page, but it gives us some, it's given us a practice with working with different elements, and I didn't really want this to be real pretty. I just wanted to show you how to do things. Let's go to Notepad++, and to start out this video, let's delete the contents inside the body. Everything that's inside the body tag, let's go ahead and delete that, and then go to our site.css and let's remove everything that's not the body. So every one of these rules below body, let's go ahead and delete that. In Notepad++, if we want to save everything, we can use this save all icon. Click that. So we have our site set up for just a blank site right now. So we want to work with a blank site. So let's refresh that, and we have nothing on the page. So that's what we want right now. We still have our background from the CSS, but we don't have anything else on there. So let's start working with divs. Divs are divisions in the HTML document. They are basically ways to organize your HTML and be able to easily manage it. It puts different elements in different divisions of the page. And most websites you go to use divs extensively because that's the easiest way to style things, and it's very easy to manipulate elements of the page based around divs. Let's start out with a div for our body wrapper, or you could call this page wrapper if you want. Let's call it page wrapper. So it's just a wrapper for the entire page that we want. Let's close that, and this is going to give us a way of styling things within the body inside of its own container. You can basically think of a div as a container, and inside that container, the first div that I want to put is a top menu wrapper. Let's see, menu wrapper. Let's go ahead and close that. And in this top menu wrapper, I want to add the top menu. We're just going to have a menu on the top of this page that allows people to navigate our site. So our menu is going to be an unordered list. We're going to give it an ID of top menu. UL means unordered list. It's one of two different list types. There's an ordered list, which is an OL tag, but unordered lists, you can think of this if you work with a word processor, you have a numbered list and you have a bulleted list. Unordered lists in HTML are kind of like bullet lists. They're bullet items. They're not numbered. They're not in any particular order. They're just items under a point, if you would say, if that's what you're doing. There's a lot of different uses for unordered lists, and one of the main uses for them is in menus. Inside of that unordered list, we're going to have a list item, and we're just going to put a link with href to a pound sign, which is basically nothingness on this page. It links to the document itself, and let's say this is the home link. Now, in normal web pages, you'll have, or websites, I should say, you have menus on those pages, and they help you navigate the site. Well, we're going to just put in a few of the more common list items that you'd have in a menu like that. So, home is one, and then we'll create another list item, and this one will link to nothingness again, and we could say this is the About Us page to tell us more about the company or the website itself. We'll create another called Contact Us, and we'll have one more we'll use for logging in. We're not really going to log in, but this is just to show how you would create a menu like that. So we'll say log in. So now we have our list, and we save that, and we go to the website. Now that is how it would look without any styles at all. So you see the bullet points, and everything's aligned vertically. We want that to show horizontally. We want it to show across the screen. So let's do that with some style. First of all, let's create a rule for our top menu wrapper. Actually, let's start out with our page wrapper. Let's create a fixed width website design. Our page wrapper itself contains everything in our web page. That's what it's going to do. That's what we have designated it for. Let's give it a width of, let's say, 800 pixels. Okay, we're going to give it a background color of white, and we're going to give it just a box shadow so that you can see. Actually, let's give it a border. It'll be easier just to see with a border. And let's do, I want to show you how you can override some border stuff here too. Okay, so border, we create a border around all 4 sides, top, bottom, left, and right side. And we give it a 1 pixel solid, let's say AAA. That's one of my favorite grays. So, and then we can override that top border by saying border top equals none. We'll save that and refresh. So now we have a white box on our screen. This is the page wrapper, and the body of the page has got the highlight, but our page wrapper itself has just a white background. You can't really see the page border at this point. We could make it black so that we could see it a little bit better. That would help. And oh, we'll take the hash font out. Okay, so we have a black border, and you can see there's no top border. It's kind of hard to see, but there is no top border there. Now I want that page wrapper to be at the top of the page. I don't want that little gap in there. So we have to change some rules inside the body so that there's no padding. Save that. And we also don't want a margin. And our page wrapper has to have no margin at the top as well. Now we could use a reset CSS to clear these margins out. Actually, let's take this out. Let's go ahead and use a reset to be easier. So the reset is going to clear out some of the page defaults. So the browsers have a default margin, default padding that comes with each browser, and sometimes they're different. Internet Explorer may be different from Firefox, and both may be different from Chrome. So one way to get around this when you're making a site, because it'll affect the styles, is to create a resetter for everything. Well, asterisk means everything, and we'll give padding equal to 0 and margin equal to 0 in our CSS rule. So see, that takes out all that gap. But the problem is, then you have to go back and reset all those defaults yourself, which it actually gives you more control, and it's actually a good thing, because then you can set what your margins, what you want your margins and your padding to be for each element. The only problem is you have to do that. When you use a reset like this, you have to do that. You have to go in and reset or change those defaults, manually type them in, which creates more rules in your CSS, but it makes sure that your site displays properly across all browsers. So let's give this page wrapper some padding of about 10 pixels. Save that. That's going to set the padding on all 4 sides to 10 pixels. And since we've set the width of that to 800 pixels, let's go ahead and set our margin on the left side to auto, and we'll set the margin on the right side to auto as well. And what that's going to do is it's going to center our page wrapper. So now we have a div that's centered inside the page, the actual body element of the page, and that is where our website's going to live, inside of that centered wrapper. And we see some problems right off the bat with our menu. Before we do anything else to this, I want to add a little bit of dummy text inside. Actually, sorry to get ahead of myself, but in the index.html file, we've got our menu, and we got our menu wrapper, and we have a menu, but we don't have a place for content. So let's go ahead and create a div underneath that menu wrapper and call it our content wrapper. You can call these things anything you want. I just make the names familiar so I can remember what it is I'm doing. So the content wrapper is a way to wrap the content. And inside this content wrapper, we're actually going to add some text, but we're going to get that text from a website called Lorem Ipsum. And Lorem Ipsum text, you may see this in a lot of places, especially on websites that are being designed. Lorem Ipsum just is basically filler text, so it's looks like Latin. Doesn't necessarily have to be Latin, but it's a lot of Latin words in mumbo jumbo a lot of times. But this gives you it's used by typesetters so that they can see how their font faces look and how everything aligns and things like that. So we just generated 5 paragraphs of Lorem Ipsum. I'm gonna copy that over to our index.html file, and it doesn't really align it very well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some paragraph tags to this. We'll go out here around, I usually use column 80 as a reference point, just from habit, because a lot of the old terminals and stuff or 80 characters wide, so we're just going to go to about 80 and return all this stuff, or add a line break inside of our document so that we can see this a little bit better. And keep going. Actually, I may have touched onto another paragraph. No, I haven't yet, so it's okay. We'll just keep doing this till we get all the paragraphs easier to read. And we may just take out a couple of those paragraphs. We only need about 2. Let's go ahead and just do that. Let's go out here and end this paragraph tag because we're at the end of it. Start another paragraph tag, and then we can delete and tab that over. And this is going to be our last one. We're going to remove the rest of them. We don't really need those. And this is going to help us see how our elements are looking on the page with some text. You wouldn't use this text in a real site, but it allows you to see how your site would look. So let's close that, and let's just go ahead and delete these. Realign this stuff and save that. So let's go back to the actual document and look at it. So now we have some lower mids, and if you notice, since we reset those styles, the paragraphs don't have any margins to the bottom. They don't have a margin on the bottom. So let's add that to the CSS real quick just to make this look a little bit better. In our below the body, I'm going to put a p tag, and we're going to add some margins to that. Margin, let's give it a margin top, margin bottom of 10 pixels, and save that and refresh it. Now we have our page, our paragraphs are kind of spaced a little bit better. That's good. So now I want to fix the menu that we have. So we're going to do some more CSS with this. Notice that the menus have, or the menu items have little black dots. That's because it's an unordered list. We need to tell that CSS to take those dots out. So let's start that out with going to, or creating a rule for our top menu wrapper. I'm sorry, for the top menu. The wrapper itself we'll style in just a moment. But so the top menu, which is our unordered list, let's say that the list style is none. We refresh this. Now it takes out the dots, which is good. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and make this a list that displays on the horizontal instead of the vertical. So we need to change the display on this to inline block. And let's save that and refresh it. It doesn't do anything yet because we got to change the actual list items themselves. So let's create a rule for the list items inside of that top menu. So we do a top menu, which is our ID designator, and then the LI is the list items inside of that UL. And we can say for them to float left. Save that. Refresh it. Now the menu becomes a horizontal menu, but there's no spacing in between the list items. So let's add that with a margin inside of the list items. The list items have a margin right of, let's say, 20 pixels. Make them space them out pretty well. So let's save that and refresh it. Now our list items are spaced out. Let's add some rules for the top menu. Now the way I arrange this is usually by order of how they appear in HTML, and you can do this any way you want. You can put these rules anywhere in the CSS file that you'd like, but for most of my pages, one of the rules that I use for myself is that all the HTML tags, the actual body tag and the paragraph tag that we see up here, the tags that are actual HTML, I put those at the top of the document usually because they're usually a more general CSS rule, and then IDs and class elements come later. But you can put them anywhere. And then since my top menu wrapper is a container, it kind of comes in the HTML before the top menu itself. I usually add it before the rule for the top menu. So let's add some rules for that container. So right now you really can't see it on the page because there's no background color or anything. So let's add a background color to it. So we're going to make it almost dark, almost black, just a dark gray, which is we're going to use 444. Save that and refresh this. Now we've got our menu, you can see at the top there, and we're going to give it a color of white. Now what I want to show you the reason I'm doing a color of white here is you want to see that it doesn't change in the menu itself. The menu doesn't change, it stays the same. It's because those are anchor tags inside of it. The list items inside that menu to log in, and you really can't see them because of the color contrast being so bad. But the home link here is a link, and since it's a link, it has default colors from the browser as well. The default color for a link inside of Chrome is blue, and it has a default text decoration of underlined. So we have to change the rules for the link itself in order to get them white. We can go down here below our top menu LI and add a top menu LI space A. This gives, what this designates is inside of our top menu, inside of the list items, all of our anchor tags, we're going to give them a color of white and a text decoration of none. Save that. Go back and look at our screen. Now our menu items are white and they're still links. They work just the same. And our top menu wrapper itself, I want to give it some padding so that the menu is away from the sides of the box itself. So let's have some padding of like 5 pixels to it. Save that. And our menu kind of looks better than it did anyway. So one thing, you see the padding, since we have a padding inside this page wrapper, the top of the page, or the top of the, or above the menu bar has a gap there, and I want to move that up. So let's change the padding rule on the page wrapper. We could say padding here on the padding top, let's say 0 pixels. Let's save that. And that pulls everything back up, makes it look a little bit better. One thing to note on this is that you do not have to specify padding like this with 2 different lines. You can do it this way. You can say the padding is 10 and then override that padding with a padding top being a 0. Or you could simply say, you could simply designate your padding by top here, and then this is the right side, and this is the bottom, and then this is the left side. So this rule here does the same thing as what we just did. This is the top padding, the right padding, the bottom padding, and the left padding. It goes in a clockwise order, starting with the top. So we save that and refresh it, and it still looks the same. That's how we wanted it to look, so we're good to go. And one other thing, our content wrapper, which is just below our menu that holds this lorem ipsum text, is right up against that menu. I want to give it a little bit of spacing. I don't want it to be right up against it. So let's create a rule for that. So our content wrapper, and in that content wrapper, let's go ahead and give it a margin top of 10 pixels and save that. Now let's go back and look at it. It'll pull our div down a little bit. So that tells you, that shows you how to use divs a little bit and create a single column layout and fixed width. You could also do this with variable widths. Let's change this to a variable width real quick and show you how that would work. So our page wrapper is set to 800 pixels wide. Now this is a fixed width layout. That's the designator for that. That's how you refer to this, because it has a fixed width. It's 800 pixels. You could also do a variable width of, let's say, 75%. Save that, and so that it would be the 75% of the width of the document. See, it widens it out, and then as you change the size of the document, it also changes the size of the page itself in the inside. So as we change the size of the window, our document automatically changes. And in some browsers, I think in Internet Explorer, you might have to refresh in between each window resize. But that's how a variable width works. A variable width can change based upon the size of the browser, or the resolution of the user's screen, or the size of the browser window that they're using. So as we change this, it changes the way that column looks. There's advantages to using each one of those types, but fixed width and variable width layouts are used by many different sites in different ways. I'm actually a proponent of the variable width because it looks better in the long run, I think, for different visitors when they come to your site. If the width of the page itself changes based upon their browser, but it's also very hard to write a good variable width layout. Fixed width is pretty easy because you're designating the width. You're designating all the sizes statically in the code. But with variable width, you'll run into a lot of other problems. Right now, we're just going to use fixed width. But I just wanted to show you that you could use a variable width. So let's change this. We'll just do 900 pixels here. Save that and refresh it. That'll give us our fixed width. Now, no matter who comes to the site, it's always going to be 900 pixels wide, no matter what their browser. But the problem with a fixed width, and I should point this out, is if somebody comes to this page and their browser is not 900 pixels wide, it's like, say it's 800 pixels wide, they won't see the entire thing. They'll have to side scroll, and side scrolling is something you really don't want. You don't want people to have to side scroll at all. Up and down is fine, but side scrolling is bad. You don't want to side scroll. But if you base your site on the smallest resolution that the majority of your users would have, then that'll give you a good idea of what percentage of your visitors will be able to see your site the way it should be seen. With a fixed width page, you might put it at a fixed width of 800 pixels, and that would mean that anyone that came to your site with at least an 800 pixel wide display would be able to see your site the way it's meant to be seen. Right now, you know, the standard, I haven't looked at it recently, but the average width of the page, width of the monitor, is at least 1024. Most of them are, you know, your 24-inch desktop monitors will probably be about 1920 pixels wide, and there's another problem with that. So if you have a user that comes to your site and their screen is 1920 pixels wide, and you have a fixed width of 800 pixels, then they're going to see a very small column in the center of their browser, and it's going to look strange. It'll look kind of like this. It would imagine that we had a fixed width of 400 pixels, and this is how your site would look to them. It would look really small, and then there would be a lot of space on the left and right side of the screen. So that's another advantage to the variable width. But if you set your fixed width at a decent number, then it will at least look good for everyone that comes. Decent. So that's a little bit about divs, and there's more you can go into with divs, such as creating multiple column layouts with 2 or 3 columns. A lot of sites have 2 or 3 columns where you would have a menu on this side, or possibly some ads on one side. And those are created with divs as well, but they use floats and different things. There's some great tutorials on multiple column layouts for CSS that you can go check out. We're not going to hit those right now. We're going to look at another thing called a span. A span allows you to style sections of your code in the span of that tag. This is basically used for styling. It's really good for using for styling. But let's say that we wanted to change the style of this sentence. We give it a style, or we'll give it a class of special, just for showing that that's a different class. So we have this class, or this span, with a class of special. You can name it anything you want. You can call it special, you can call it whatever. It doesn't really matter. And then we're going to end that span here. So this sentence is going to be special. That's what we're going to say. We save the HTML, and then we come to our CSS, and since it's a class, we're going to designate that with a dot. We'll say dot special, and I should really scroll this up so that you can see it a little bit better. Hang on. Let's do that, just in case YouTube ads. I'm going to go on top of that or something. Let's give it a font style of italic and font width, or font weight of bold. Let's make it a little bit bigger too. Font size is 1.1 EM. And let's save that. Now let's go look at our page. That span changed the style of this sentence, and it gave it italics and bolded it and changed the size of it a little bit. You can use spans to change styles of things, and one of the most common things that I do with it is if I'm listing a bunch of things using PHP, and I want to change like every other item, give it a background of gray or something so that you can easily see a table of some sort maybe, then you could use a span and then plug in a class name to that span dynamically with a PHP code, and it would give every other column a gray background. It's a handy feature that you can use span to do those things. The old way of doing this with HTML, let's just remove this and I'll show you the old way. Now, I'm not endorsing the old way at all, but let's look at that. Let's take out the spam here. Now, if we wanted to do the same thing with HTML, we could have bolded it and then italic. I'm sorry, it's not bold, a dummy. Okay, so the B tag and then the I tag, and we could have used a font tag to change the size of it, but I don't even bother with that. I just want to show you that in HTML we would have got basically the same thing by doing that. But the problem with that is that in order to do that same thing to multiple elements inside of the HTML, you have to do the exact same thing in HTML. You'd have to, if you want to change this, then it's the same way. You'd have to do bold. You have a lot of tags running around there that you have to keep up with the nesting order of and all that. and it becomes messy to deal with when you get to the big documents. So to alleviate that, you can enclose that into a span. Span gives you a better way to designate styles for certain elements anyway. Let's see here. Span, the class of special. And just end that and close that span. Here. We could do the same thing down here. Give it a span, class, special. So instead of having to go back and change, if you wanted to change the rules for what you consider special, instead of having to change every single element on that page, you could just change the styles in CSS. So let's go to let's save that and then go to our CSS and change special again. Let's just give it a font size of 1.3 em. Let's change the color to red. Let's change the font weight to bold. I'm not sure why this tab decided that it was only going to do one, but let's do there. Let's fix the tab size on that. Save that. Instead of having to go back into the HTML and change all these the style directly in HTML, we can just, if we wanted to take the bold off of that, we wanted to remove the bold, we can do that just here. One line and we're done. All the bold is removed from that special element. If we wanted to change the background color of it, we could do that. Or with let's say, let's give it a dark gray. It's going to look awful, but save it. So it's a lot of things. We could also change the text decoration if you wanted to underline. There we go. So save that. Now the text is underlined. Anyway, so it just gives you a way to change the styles on a lot of the different elements. If you want to then wrap everything into a span on the HTML side, you can then later go back and change the style of that if you want. Divs allow you to position elements better and divide your page into different sections. So that's all we're going to cover. The next video we're going to do an introductory of PHP. We're going to look at what PHP is and what we can use it for. But this is all we're going to do with the introductory of HTML and CSS. At this point, you may not know a lot about HTML and CSS, but with the practice, the only way that you can become better at it is to practice it. And if you run into problems, look up those problems or ask people to help you with those problems, and you'll learn more that way. And this gives you a good basis to go in there and really start messing with it, trying to make a page look the way you want it to look. And as you're doing that, you'll learn more that way. I'm just trying to give you what you need to start out. So in the next video, we're going to start talking about PHP, and that's going to be where it gets interesting. So check it out and subscribe.